It's a sunny Wednesday here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Kim Young-gil. Let's get started with taking a glimpse of today's highlights. Korea's stock market is treading water as investors take to the sidelines ahead of the U.S. Federal Reserve's key policy meeting. Korea's cruise industry is struggling amid a sharp plunge in the number of Chinese tourists. We take a look at how the industry is trying to survive through diversification. These stories and more coming right up. The United States is renewing its appeal to American financial institutions to be extra careful in avoiding business with North Korea. According to Radio Free Asia on Wednesday, the U.S. Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network warned institutions last week not to get involved with the regime's money laundering network. A previous warning was issued back in June when the Financial Action Task Force began applying countermeasures against Pyongyang for money laundering and financing terrorism. Taiwan is the latest country that has joined international efforts to tighten the screws on North Korea following its latest nuclear test. The island nation has suspended its exports of liquefied natural gas, crude oil, and refined oil products to Pyongyang. It is also stopping the import of textile products from the ROC state to comply with a UN Security Council resolution adopted earlier this month. The ban was announced by Taiwan's Ministry of Economic Affairs and came into effect as of Tuesday. The European Union's top trade official has criticized the Trump administration for blaming the Korea-US FTA as the reason for mounting U.S. trade deficits. In an email interview with a local daily, EU Trade Commissioner Cecilia Malmström said the deficit is not due to the FTA, but rather consumer choices. She added trade shortfalls are only a small part of the bigger picture, saying a country's account balance does not solely determine the overall benefits and costs of a trade deal. The commissioner highlighted that the EU views trade as the growth of the sum rather than a plus-minus way. Korean companies have a much lower survival rate than that of their European counterparts like the UK, Germany, France, Spain, and Italy. According to the Korea International Trade Association, the first-year survival rate of local firms was at 62.4%, much lower than the UK's 92.2% and France's 82%. The report also showed 8 out of 10 Korean firms were engaged in the services sector, and almost all of them employ less than 10 workers. The association warned these small firms faced a higher risk of being affected by negative external factors. In order to maintain employment stability, experts say the government should focus on improving the structure and competitiveness of these smaller businesses. Now moving on to our coverage of the financial markets, we have our markets contributor Jamie Kim joining us on the line. Hello, Jamie.
Hello.
So tell us how Korean equities performed on this Wednesday.
Well, there was a bit of volatility in the Korean equity markets today. Stocks opened higher on good news from Wall Street, where the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 all ended at record highs. But the index soon dipped on foreign selling, especially as investors sat on the sidelines, awaiting the results of the ongoing FOMC meeting in the U.S. The KOSPI eventually closed 0.16% lower at 2412.20 points. The tech-heavy KOSDAQ closed 0.95% lower at 668.05. Despite news that amount of public offerings on the KOSDAQ hit an all-time high this year, breaking a previous record set in 2000.
Right, Jamie, could you give us a more detailed breakdown of the market action today?
Sure. Tech stocks extended gains after starting the week in positive territory. Number one market cap Samsung Electronics edged up 0.19%, while SK Hynix closed up 1.89% higher. SK Hynix shares in particular were lifted by news that its consortium with Bain Capital was named the preferred bidder for the chip unit of Japan's Toshiba. Other market movers such as Hyundai Motor and POSCO also ended higher, with Hyundai rising 1.43% and POSCO up 0.31%. Now on the KOSDAQ, biosimilar maker Celltron also rose for a seventh straight day.
Right, and can you give us a rundown on some of the major market events that are lined up for the rest of the week?
Sure. The FOMC, as I mentioned, is still in progress, and investors will be waiting for clues from Fed Chair Janet Yellen, who will hold a press conference following the conclusion of that meeting. Now, this, along with U.S. initial jobless claims due out on Thursday and a speech by European Central Bank Chief Draghi on the same day, will all likely affect global equities, including Korea. This has been Jemmy Kim for Business Daily.
Amid North Korea's ongoing provocations, South Korea's economy is holding up surprisingly well with minimal impact to the financial markets. To help learn more about the market risks posed by North Korea, we have global strategist Daniel Yu from Securities joining us in the studio today. Hello and welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
Amid North Korea's continued provocations, South Korean stocks actually rose on the day of the missile test last Friday and extend gains to start off this week. Now, it seems local equities have become desensitized towards North Korean risk. What's the reason?
Right. If you think about the South Korean equity markets, it opened up to foreign investors about 30 years ago. So every single time there has been any kind of North Korea issues, equity market did go down, but immediately after that, usually market recovers. I think that there has been too many times of these North Korean threats that affected the equity market, so people actually learned that it's not really a major issue. I think that more importantly, the economic conditions are the key factor that's driving the financial sector. And if you look at global economy as a whole, they are actually improving. And Korea is much more of a export-oriented countries. And the global economy recovers and export improves, equity market goes up.
Right, and again last Friday, Japan's stock markets actually hit a new record high, even after a North Korean missile flew over their territory. Are the reasons similar as well?
Yes, I mean, let's look at Japanese economy, right? North Korea issues. But let's just set aside that and what's happening to Japanese economies. If you look at Japanese economies, if you look at the second quarter of this year, it grew 4% year on year. That's highest in the last decades. If you look at the property market, it's going up. Also, if you look at the unemployment ratios, it's the lowest level. And only thing that concerns is the disinflation environment. Inflation is not going up quickly enough. But because of that, there's continuation of abundance of liquidities that the BOJ is continue to provide the liquidity into the system. So having said that, the economy is improving, valuations are cheap, so people like Japanese market. But if you just look at the equity risk premium, that's related to North Korea. If you look at South Korea, people apply around 8% plus equity risk premium to justify the current value. If you look at Japan, it is applying around 7% plus. Global economy as a whole, it only applies 5%. So already, Japan, South Korea, we are putting huge amount of risk premium attached to the equity markets and the financial markets. So a lot of these North Korean threats are already priced in.
Right. Now, some analysts even say the North Korean risk could even have positive aspects instead of being a pure negative factor for the South Korean economy. Right. What does this mean?
Right. I mean, I think that's kind of far-fetched, but nevertheless, I think we've got to look at that. If you always think about North Korea to the South Korea, it had been an economic burden, right? People talk about unification cost because, you know, a lot of rumors were that North Koreans are starving, economy is diminishing. People were very negative about North Korean economy as a whole and the regime as a whole. And if there's any unification happens, and it happened to Germany's, that the cost for the South Korean would be significant. In other words, every year, 2 to 3% of GDP should be spent on the reunification cost. Now, what's interesting though is that what we hear is that North Korea's economy is growing very fast these days. They have changed their tactics, meaning that they're using the national resources and focusing on just developing nuclear weapon. If we're just focusing on that, the cost to the economy is much less. You're not spending a lot of money on military cost of like buying planes and tanks and whatnot. And then any other reserves remaining, they're putting into the economic conditions. Trying to improve the economic conditions. So what we hear is that North Korea's GDP growth are growing fast. If that's the case, if the conditions are stabilized, the peaceful resolution occurs, then people might start to think that South Korea's costs of unification is going to be much less. So therefore, people might think that the whole issue about North Korea is no longer a threat, but rather it's more of a pro indication to the South Korean market.
Now, in the past few weeks, South Korean stocks have performed poorly, but at times posted large gains due to tech shares being boosted by rising semiconductor prices. Now, how confident are you regarding its sustainability, especially given the current geopolitical tensions?
Right. I'm very confident because I wrote a book on Korean equity market will probably rise very significantly over the last 2 years. We think that the equity market should continue to go up. The reason why in the past 1 or 2 months or so Korean equity market did not go up was because last 1 year or so it grew 30%, right? And even last just YTD year to date, it grew almost 20%. So because of that, you need some breather, right? You need to take a break. So for the couple of months, this North Korean issue provided a very good scapegoat to take some profits. But I think that if there's a continuation of earnings growth and continuation of economic growth, and these corporates are showing an improvement of cash flows and dividend payouts, all that means is the equity market will continue to go up. Now, so who's leading that is the electronic sector, the semiconductor business, Korean tech companies, which it's almost 40% of the total equity market. So if those earnings are improving very fast, and it will continue to do so with the fourth industrial revolution that's happening on global scale, we think that Korean equity market should continue to go up.
Now, what factors may trigger South Korea's benchmark KOSPI to fluctuate in the coming months?
Well, clearly, once again, it's the North Korea issues. We don't know what the outcome will be. There's a continuation of tension developing between North Korea and U.S. I think what we are concerned is not about what North Korea will do. It is what U.S. will do. If the U.S. takes some kind of actions against North Korea, that could increase the tension between the overall, the geopolitical region. If that's the case, then yes, there will be fluctuation of the Korean equity market. Also, other issues that can affect the Korean equity market is clearly what happens to the Fed in terms of interest rates. They are showing a very dovish stance right now. They're not raising interest rate fast, but they could if the inflation picks up very quickly. So we need to watch that. All we talk about here is that what will fluctuate is not economic conditions. It's all about geopolitical, political issues. And usually when you invest into the equity market, you should ignore these political issues.
Well, we hope the mood of limited reaction by stock markets continue. Thank you for your insight today, Daniel.
No, thank you.
A nationwide shopping festival involving hundreds of retailers and traditional markets will kick off next week here in Korea. The annual Korea Sales Festa organized by the government will run from September 28th to October 31st. During the event, more than 400 retailers and manufacturers will offer online and offline discounts on various items ranging from electronics, clothes to furniture. A series of cultural and entertainment events are also scheduled with special discounts on shopping, accommodation, and transportation, also available for foreigners. During last year's festival, Korea's department stores and duty-free shops posted combined sales of over $7.6 billion. Korea's cruise industry was one of the hardest hit after China imposed ban on the sale of group tour packages to the country over its deployment of a THAAD anti-missile battery. But Seoul has come up with measures to lessen the country's reliance on Chinese visitors. And as our Lee Ji-won tells us, those efforts are starting to bear fruit.
A cruise carrying some 2,500 tourists arrived in Korea's southern port city of Busan early Tuesday morning. Having departed from Taiwan on Sunday, Sapphire Princess made a one-day stop in Korea as part of a 7-day trip around East Asia. Unlike last year, when there was only one cruise coming from Taiwan, Tuesday's trip is the fourth time that a cruise from Taiwan has docked at the port city this year, carrying some 9,500 tourists to Busan. The majority of Korea's cruise tourists used to come from China, which accounted for over 90% of the nearly 2 million cruise tourists visiting Korea last year. But with Beijing banning group tours to Korea in March in retaliation for Seoul's deployment of the THAAD missile defense system, Korea's cruise industry has been hard hit, seeing a more than 90% on-year fall in cruise tourists in May and June. Since the ban, Korea's tourism industry, including Busan Port Authority, has been active in trying to diversify its tourists, and Taiwan is one promising market. Port authorities expect the number of Taiwanese cruise tourists to jump from 250,000 last year to well over 300,000 this year. With limited time to explore the city, many cruise tourists opt for a one-day tour to see Busan's famous sights.
One of the stops on the tour is the Beef Square. Every year, the city hosts the world-renowned Busan International Film Festival. And in this area, tourists can enjoy the history of Korean films while tucking into some local street foods.
From spicy rice cakes to Busan's famous sweet pancakes hotdog, there's plenty of Korean snacks to taste. And on the streets are handprints of famous movie directors and stars, as well as posters of some of the country's most well-known movies.
This fish cake is very tasty. It's my first time I've been to Busan. The food is great and this place is really exciting.
Port authorities say they are working on diverse tour packages that can attract more tourists from other countries next year.
Our promotion activities focused mainly on Taiwan this year, but we will expand our marketing into other Southeast Asian countries such as Hong Kong, Indonesia, and Malaysia to share Korea's beautiful traditions.
Lee Ji-won, Business Daily, Busan.
The requirement for potential tenants to get first priority in apartment allotments in speculative districts in the country has been strengthened. Starting Wednesday, potential residents must be subscribed to a mortgage-linked account for at least 2 years and make 24 separate deposits to be eligible for priority listing. Prior to the revision, they only needed to subscribe for a minimum of 1 year and make 12 installments. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport said this is a follow-up measure to the government's new housing market regulations launched in early August. With stricter regulation in place, it anticipates demand for short-term speculative investments to be significantly reduced. Smartphone owners in Korea are one of the world's heaviest users of mobile phone applications. Driven by mobile game sales, Koreans are now using apps for an average of 3.3 hours a day compared to Taiwan's 3.1 hours and Japan's 2.7. This is according to Apple Annie CEO Bertrand Schmidt speaking at Google's Go Global conference in Tokyo based on the firm's real-time statistics on app usage. Mobile game sales are continuing to surge in Korea, Taiwan, and Japan, with revenues from the three countries topping $8 billion during the first half of this year. Last week, a robot industry showcase was hosted by the Korea International Exhibition and Convention Center. On display were machines created by Korean conglomerates as they step into the world of collaborative robots. Eunice Kim has more.
It's considered the first line of smart manufacturing. A robot developed by Tucson Robotics works side by side with a human worker to piece together an indoor thermostat without concerns for safety. That's because the machine is equipped with a sensor that detects even the slightest force, enabling it to avoid bumping into its human partner. With the ability to regulate its force, it performs delicate, repetitive work before handing the finishing touches to its human colleague.
The sensors double the safety of the robots and creates a much safer work environment, no matter how close the worker is to the robot.
This robot, developed by Hanwha Techwin, is able to recognize objects and working environments in 2 and 3 dimensions. This allows it to complete tasks that require movement.
We've internalized the design, so the user can easily customize it by attaching a video system or a peripheral device.
Another acts as an assistant at a coffee shop. While this robot assists people unable to use their lower body to walk. This army of mini-bots show off their smooth and natural movements. All incremental steps to what the future could hold as machine merges with artificial intelligence under brisk development in Korea and the world at large. The fourth industrial revolution, realized in the form of smarter, sophisticated, and self-aware robots, may not be too far away after all. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
The city of Pyeongchang is set to host the 2018 Winter Olympic Games come next February. The Alpine town will play another role besides providing venues for exciting star-studded competitions. Korea is eager to showcase the latest of its information and communication technology while the Olympics are being held. Kim Hae-sung shows us how the country plans to promote its advanced ICT.
The 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics is less than 5 months away, and Korea is in its final stages of reviewing its information and communication technology. Along with culture, environment, peace, and economy, the Korean government has set ICT Olympics as one of the 5 goals for the upcoming Winter Games.
The Olympics is a huge global event. It's also an opportunity to showcase the nation's prowess in technology and industry. Through the event, we're planning to position Korea as an ICT-strong country and leader of the fourth industrial revolution by applying 5 ICT technologies and services.
These 5 areas include 5G communication networks, UHD broadcasting, virtual reality, augmented reality, and the Internet of Things. These cutting-edge technologies are expected to help both athletes and visitors from over 100 countries. From the moment they arrive at Incheon International Airport, they will be guided to their destinations via AR. Technology is not just narrowing down physical distance, but also breaking down language barriers. With around 50,000 athletes, International Olympic Committee members, and foreign journalists expected at the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, communication is vital. And this robot named Furo will help provide interpretation services during the Games. Furo uses its AI technology and a vocabulary database built specifically for the Winter Olympics to translate between Korean and 8 other languages, including English, Chinese, and Japanese.
경기장으로 가려면 어떻게 가야 하나요?
How do I get to the stadium?
Robots are the ICT icons of the century. It will be the first time to show how robots can provide useful digital services for people at an international venue. There are smartphone apps for interpretation, but with Furo, people from 2 different countries will be able to converse through the robots, which is much more convenient.
In addition to interpretation services, more than 1 Furo will be located at each stadium, providing real-time notifications from the Games through remote computing services. Given that the Winter Olympics will be watched by 2.1 billion viewers from over 200 countries, the Pyeongchang ICT Olympics preparation team is also planning to adopt the 5th-generation mobile network, 5G, and UHD broadcasting technology.
The 5G network technology allows a data transmission speed that is 20 times faster than 4G. UHD broadcasts have a 4 times higher resolution, so viewers will feel like they're actually watching the game live in the stadium.
For a more dynamic experience for around 1 million domestic and foreign spectators, sports content services such as virtual reality videos or winter sports games are also scheduled. The 1988 Seoul Olympics were an opportunity for Korea to show the world how it achieved the so-called miracle on the Han River, achieving industrialization within a short period of time. As the host of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics in 2018, Korea is hoping to boost its image as a leader in cutting-edge ICT technology. 김혜성, Business Daily.
And that brings us to the end of our program, but we'll be back tomorrow with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching and goodbye.